Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. We strive to be a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes, your identities are welcome here. Believers in God and mystery, nature and love, queer and trans folks, immigrants and refugees, all of who you are and who we are becoming are welcome. Welcome to visitors and newcomers and those online as well. We're glad you're here. After service, you can join us down in the Commons for refreshments and conversation with information and sign-ups for events and groups. There's a preschool playroom open just past the lobby for young ones and activities for the kids following the time for all ages, and all are welcome. Thank you to all those who helped organize and participate in yesterday's 1866 social. You can still see some of the timepiece aprons downstairs and the displays, like the quilt behind me from the History Center. There were games and ice cream and a very successful pie raffle as well. So thanks to the Clara Barton Guild for hosting for a fun, festive day here yesterday. And a thank you and welcome to our musicians, Alexandra and John. Thank you for providing your gifts of music this morning. Welcome. And thank you to Stephanie and Leslie, both for offering reflections today in this service. Each month, our offering goes out our doors to support work in the wider community for our justice partners. Our justice partner for May is Med City Refuge, providing support for trans folks coming to Rochester for gender-affirming health care. All of today's offering goes to their work. As the plates pass, you can give or online. And we're glad to welcome Ani from Med City Refuge during our coffee hour today down in the Commons. You can stop by the social justice table to learn more about their work in the community. Thank you for your generosity. And this Wednesday, join us for our weekly supper and programs with childcare and choir rehearsal. This week will be a Green Sanctuary webinar from the UUA about our eco-justice work in congregations. Supper's at 5:30, followed by choir and the viewing of that webinar in the Commons, and all are welcome if you're deep in that work or just wanting to learn more. That's this Wednesday night. And you have a few more weeks to submit names for our new locations road. There's a display downstairs. Anyone can submit names for the month of May. We'll finalize a list of June, and then we'll vote during Chalice Camp in July. This new road for our new church location up by Century High School needs to end in the word place, so you can bring your thoughtful, creative, somewhat sarcastic at times names if you want to, and submissions, examples of submissions will be updated down in the Commons each week, so that is open for the month of May. And on the back of your order of service, you can see we have a few special Sundays coming up. So next week is our annual Flower Communion. It's the culmination of the year. It's our last two-service Sunday for the regular year. So we invite you to bring a flower for our annual communal bouquet. And then the following week, Memorial Day, we switch to one service only, and that happens throughout the rest of the summer. 10 a.m., one service only for the summer, and Reverend Ruth will preach. And then that following Sunday, the first Sunday in June, we'll have our annual meeting following the service at 10, where board leadership, myself and others, will offer reflections about this year and the year to come. We'll also elect leaders for the coming year and set goals together, so we hope you can join us for the annual meeting that first Sunday in June. Speaking of which, there you'll hear more about the fiscal health of our church, and we are glad to announce that we have met our pledge goal for the coming year. So we have a wonderful, balanced budget. So given the struggle in many congregations and uncertainties in the world, this is a great success. So thank you for your generosity and for your promises to help keep us vibrant for the year to come. And finally, a change today due to schedules for some of our new members. We'll wait to have our full welcome litany on a future Sunday, so we'll skip ahead in the order of service a little bit, but we're so glad to welcome new members, Eileen and Eric, who recently joined, who will light our chalice for our 9 a.m. service today in just a moment. So thank you for being here this morning, and welcome formally. So that's a lot of announcements. I invite you to take a breath as we enter our time. And as we begin our service, I want to add a little context before we sing our opening hymn. It might seem a little odd, maybe not, to begin Mother's Day with the Battle Hymn of the Republic. unless you think of it as fierce feminism, which in some ways it is. So these words were written by Unitarian Julia Ward Howe in the midst of the Civil War, a brilliant writer and abolitionist, with these words supporting both abolition as well as subtle imagery of women's suffrage, moving towards gender expansiveness and being transfigured for collective liberation. Thanks to Derek Robertson for a lot of the context around this. The song is not just about being pro-Union or pro-North, but a declaration that the conflict of the Civil War was what came from generations of oppressive practices. A reminder that none of us are free unless we all are free. And then a decade later, following the war, she'd write what became known as the Mother's Day Proclamation for Peace and Demilitarization, also in your bulletin, which we'll hear more about in the service today too. So with that, the lyrics are in your order of service, and we'll sing the words of our Unitarian feminist, abolitionist, Mother's Day instigator, our great-great-great-grandmother's spiritual ancestor, Julia Ward Howe, and we'll explore those lyrics more throughout the service. So lyrics are in your order of service. Before we sing, though, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and greet those around you.
When we light this chalice, our gathering becomes a sacred expression of our shared faith. May the light of this chalice guide us on our journey toward a more just, peaceful, and loving world.
In gratitude, we'll receive the offering for Med City Refuge.
If the children would like to join me, I have my wonder box today. Good morning. So today, Reverend Luke gave us an explanation of kind of what the day is about. And one of the things he talked about was this thing called a proclamation. Does anybody know what a proclamation is? Well, I have one right here. It's very official. So a proclamation, now let's pretend that this is 1870, and I am out in public and I have this, and I very forcefully and with a lot of drama and determination, unroll this, and then I stand up and I start reading it. This is my proclamation. Do you know what a proclamation is yet? No. It's kind of like an announcement. It's a formal announcement. If you proclaim something, you state it with certainty and belief behind it of something. So this is the Mother's Day Proclamation for Peace. Yep, announcements are something that people say, exactly. So if I got up and read this, and I'm not going to read it right now because I think Stephanie's going to read it later. But if I stand up and I say this, if I proclaim something for peace, I say, I demand peace. Now, is that going to actually just make it magically happen? No, but what do you think a proclamation like that might do? If I proclaim that I stand for peace? Get other people to do it, exactly. It gives other people the courage and the hope and the wisdom and the strength to proclaim for something that they firmly, firmly believe in. And we're going to go down and we're going to talk more about this proclamation. Yep. Yes, and we're going to talk about that when we go down. We're going to talk about all our different beliefs and what kind of proclamations we would make if we had a proclamation to make. Would we proclaim for peace? Let's see. Let's head down and we'll... Oh, he's fine. He's good. We're going to head down while Rose plays the children's benediction and talk more about this proclamation in kids speak. Well, you stay up here and talk about it in adult speak. So if you want to join us down here for an easier explanation a little later, just come and find me.
Sing along if you know this one. We're clearly soldiers in petticoats and gauntless crusaders for women's votes. Though we adore men individually, we agree that as a group, they're rather stupid. Thank you. Thank you to Mrs. Banks from Mary Poppins for that early contribution to my feminist awakening. Growing up, I was lucky to have strong influences who stood firm for gender equality and encouraged my sisters and me to aspire to live lives with independence and self-sufficiency, to be strong, to embrace athleticism. I remember idolizing characters like Princess Atalanta, who ran in the same race as men who were trying to win her hand in marriage. Or Calamity Jane, who was just as rough and tough as any old cowboy. Over and over, I was shown that there was an alternative to sugar, spice, and everything nice, and my little tomboy heart was thrilled. At the same time, though, I wrestled with comparing myself to other girls. The way they looked, their abilities, the way they seemed so cool around others. I remember making up reasons to be angry or put off by them, and it wasn't until my late teens that I found the antidote to these feelings in a short but very impactful quote. It goes, "Her success is not your failure." My perspective of how women can interact transformed with these words. The idea that there is space for all of us, even if she is succeeding in a way that I am not and would like to. There is space for all of us to thrive. We don't need to be in competition with each other because we are stronger when we take up space together. And besides, who really benefits from all that infighting anyway? Probably men. No, not really. That's not what I believe. In fact, I have another short quote I turn to so that I don't create reasons to be angry or put off by men either. And that quote goes like this: "You don't have to be anti-man to be pro-woman." These words, too, help me feel a sense of relief, like my viewpoint can give space for the nuance that is reality. Women can be strong and acknowledge their male accomplices, while at the same time resisting the ideals that uphold patriarchy. So for a short time, I fancied myself a complete feminist because of these 3 gender paradigm shifts. Women can have masculine traits, we don't have to compete with each other, and it's not about putting down men, even though Mrs. Banks may disagree. And then I started preparing for my college's annual performance of the Vagina Monologues and was confronted by a new essay called "They Beat the Girl Out of My Boy, or So They Tried." This piece was written after the author interviewed a group of trans women and poetically documented their experiences from innocent curiosity to heartbreaking bullying and violence. Luckily, another quote presented itself and helped to once again widen my worldview as to who women are and our collective power. Simply, it goes, support your sisters, not just your sisters. Do you get it? These nuances and identities of womanhood are so important, and I know I have barely scratched the surface. Happy Mother's Day, by the way. But I do have one more quote that might widen the circle. Audre Lorde said, "I am not free, while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own." In many ways, I am the woman little Mary Poppins watching Stephanie thought she would be. And in just as many, I am more than she could have ever imagined, because the more I awaken to this world, the more I believe that women's liberation really does mean a collective liberation for everyone. And that's worth rising up for. After all, Mrs. Banks did end her song by saying, "Cast off the shackles of yesterday, shoulder to shoulder into the fray. Our daughters will adore us, and they'll sing in grateful chorus. Well done, Sister Suffragettes."
On a sunny, warm afternoon last weekend, while school-aged children rode bikes lazily through the wide streets of their town, I was greeted by a young father outside the home he shares with his partner and a few friends. My black bag and baby scale in tow, I followed him to a small, dimly lit bedroom, doubling as a nursery. There, reclined in an overstuffed armchair, his partner held their newborn daughter on her chest, bare skin to bare skin. The tiny baby slept, face and body relaxed, feeling wholly safe, enveloped in her mother's warmth, scent, voice, touch, and heartbeat. This primal bond between a mother or parent and their child is the closest thing to the divine that I know of here on earth. It's a sacred place of pure love and fierce protection. And how we experience this first relationship is the blueprint for what we learn to expect from our relationships for the rest of our lives. And so protecting and supporting new families in this beautiful, raw, and transformative phase of their lives is one of the most important responsibilities of a caring and just society. It was for this reason that last year I chose to pivot from my job as a primary care pediatrician toward a unique opportunity to focus on providing holistic care and support for newborns and their parents in their homes. And in those intimate spaces, I listen as parents express their delight in their children, as well as their fears and their challenges. Many parents are feeling anxious, exhausted, depleted, overjoyed, and alone all at the same time. I hear things like, "I didn't know it would be this hard. I don't want anyone else to hold her because I'm afraid that they won't do it like I do, and she'll cry or she'll get hurt." Or when I gently suggest that they try to sleep when the baby sleeps, I often will hear, "Well, I can't sleep when the baby sleeps because I'm afraid he'll stop breathing. So I just watch him the whole time to make sure he's okay." In the United States, 21% of women experience a mood or anxiety disorder during pregnancy or in the first year after giving birth. Of those, another 20% have had thoughts of harming themselves. And those are the ones that shared that with us in a study. I'm guessing it's probably more. The greatest risk of self-harm is in the first 3 to 4 months after a baby arrives. We were never meant to do this alone. The journey into parenthood has always been marked by adjustments in roles and identity. But what I share with parents often is that really until the second half of the 20th century, in the US at least, this was usually something that was undertaken within a circle of community support. A village of grandparents, aunties, sisters, neighbors, friends, allo-parents, as I call them, the parents, that extended family of parents that take responsibility for the raising of our children. In contrast, many parents today have moved hundreds of miles from their families for jobs, and it can be really hard in our very individualistic society to ask neighbors or friends for help when we need it. So how can we as individuals and as a community proactively provide exquisite care for our mothers and parents so that they may feel rested, supported, and able to cultivate that sacred space of unconditional love for themselves and for their children? I invite you on this Mother's Day to consider how you can help rebuild communal circles of caring for folks at all stages of the parenting journey, including those for whom becoming a parent may be only a dream, unfulfilled. So some ideas. When a new niece or nephew or grandchild arrives, ask what chores or tasks you can take off the parents' to-do list so that they can rest and recharge their batteries. Tell your adult child that you see and love what an amazing job they are doing as a parent to their children, even if you maybe would do it a little differently. Offer to bring a healthy meal to your neighbor with littles, just because. Advocate for paid family and medical leave and affordable childcare. Listen deeply, talk honestly about the hard stuff, or simply sit with a hand at her back to let her know that she isn't alone. How will you care for a mother or parent in your life on this Mother's Day.
Good morning. It is good to be with you. I invite you to settle in here as we create a place of communal caring and connection. It's our time to pause amidst the busyness of our lives, to slow down enough to consider the beauty that is here all around us, and to open a space for listening and love. Here, we honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Jean Hansen, serving as our caring coordinator, arranging care for our members and friends in need for the last 2 weeks. Rhonda Lorenz will take over tomorrow for the next 2, and we thank her for that. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through challenging and happy times. And life can be challenging. We could all use some extra support with what life throws at us. And if you are experiencing those challenges in your life, we encourage you to reach out for support and help. If you need additional care or personal pastoral care, please reach out to Reverend Luke, Reverend Ruth, or myself. Today's beautiful flowers are shared by Rose Mish in honor of her friend Amanda Neiman, who passed away in a car accident on March 5th. She would have turned 32 on May 5th. Amanda taught elementary school, knew German, loved classical music and cats, and her favorite color was hot pink. In this community, we share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because we strive to let all people know here they are valued. We believe that each person's experience matters. We lift up those who are experiencing sadness, illness, or loneliness. May the strength and love in our congregation help guide you. And we revel in those who are experiencing joys in their lives. May their happiness lift us all, and may their joy filter into all around them. This morning, we hold in our hearts Christian Kennedy and her biological father, Mark Kennedy, who has been hospitalized following a fall and a deepening of physical health challenges connected to his lifelong struggle with addiction. May he find healing, support, and the inner strength needed for the path ahead. Let us keep both Christian and Mark in our thoughts and surround them with compassion, hope, and loving community. We hold in tender care Bruce Bjorgum and family, who are grieving the sudden loss of his only brother, Gregory Robert Bjorgum, age 72, of Steamboat, Colorado. Gregory tragically drowned last Saturday in a frigid mountain lake following a fishing accident. As they navigate the pain and sorrow of this loss, let us hold them in love and compassion. Cards of support and well wishes are welcome for all. The list that is compiled weekly contains several members and friends of the church who are experiencing this sadness or celebration, and is posted in the entryway of the church as well as through a link in your e-news. We provide cards and postage and welcome you to leave those cards near the basket for mailing. Here, our service to each other and to the wider world is our focus. May the faith in the Spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
I invite you to take a deep breath. Breathe deep the breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning. Above you the sky, and beyond that the stars shining with their ancient light, holding you in this moment, this breath, you yourself made of earth and stars. Know that in this house you're named and known as beloved and sacred. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God and Gaia of 1,000 names and beyond all naming. In these days of far too much destruction of good things, of defunding and dismantling and demoralizing work, let us be about the work of creativity and building of good things in defiant hope, and with each choice creating a strand to help hold a fabric that will hold us, carrying on the good labor of ancestors before us, who always created ways out of no ways, finding voice when all would have rendered them silent, to pick up our part now for the continued work of suffrage and of abolition, of a liberation that holds us all. Let us bring that world to birth. I invite you to bring the names and places you're holding in your heart this day in joy or sorrow. I invite you to, in this time, silently or aloud, speak their names. For the names spoken and unspoken, may we all be held in love. These words of meditation are from a praise song for mothers. Praise for the mothers, the aunties, the grands, cis and trans, and all of us between, for down-to-earth wisdom and limitless compassion. Praise to birth mothers and adoptive mothers, surrogate mothers and mothers in spirit. Praise to the mother that is sleepless and swaying, reminding their child they are sacred and they should go to bed. Praise to the mother that's wise and uncertain, reminding their child that being human is not perfection but process. Praise to the mothers who create the world every day in a home or an office, in a high-rise or a construction site, in a boardroom, classroom, operating room, on the field or the court, on the page or from the pulpit, between the notes, on the canvas. Love for the mother who has lost the child. Love for the child who has lost the mother. Love for the women who have longed to be mothers, still in hope or letting go. Love for the women who are pressured to become mothers and choose not to, who create the world in equal measure. Love to the children with hard relationships with their own mothers. May there be healing in our shared humanity. Praise to the strength of women creating and building up the world generation to generation. And praise and love to the mother of all, which holds us all on this sacred earth. May it be so. Amen. The hymn is in your bulletin, Let All Around Us Be Peace. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing.
Peace before us, peace behind us, peace underneath. Peace within us, peace over us, let all around us be peace. Love before us, love behind us, love underneath. Love within us, love over us, let all around us be love. Hope before us, hope behind us, hope underneath. Hope within us, hope over us, let all around us be hope.
Appeal to Womanhood Throughout the World, later known as Mother's Day Proclamation, by Julia Ward Howe. Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether our baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We, women of one country, will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence vindicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of counsel. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each bearing after his own the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a general Congress of women, without limit of nationality, may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient, and at the earliest period consistent with its objects, to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace.
Thank you for the lovely music today. It's gorgeous. It's not all flowers and joy. Mother's Day, that is. For many, it's much more like a very messy garden, complicated, hard to notice sometimes. It's winding and tangled roots of relationship by birth or by choice, strains of identity, of nourishment or not, of rigidity or possibility, of care and grace and struggle and pain. A simple day it is not. And like the flowers that often accompany the day, there's always more than what we see just in that beauty of a vase or a bloom. There are cut stems and fragile petals and roots that go beyond, that just might lead us to deeper stories. One such story of this day is Julia Ward Howe, one of our mothers in spirit, a brilliant poet, writer, and activist, in spite of her creativity and agency being trampled by her controlling husband. And yet, right she did, finding voice and influence long past her husband's what's-his-name. Julia Ward Howe is who we remember here. As we noted and sang earlier, her words of the Battle Hymn of the Republic gave imagery first of what happens when generations perpetuate control over groups of people. Indigenous communities, women, enslaved people, and from that comes the horrors of war. The truth that marches on is what was spoken in the midst of the civil rights movement, too, that violence begets violence. And all mixed in with that imagery is her own story and identity in a miserable marriage where she wrote, "In the course of this time, I've never known my husband to approve of any act of mine which I myself valued. Books, poems, essays, everything has been contraband in his eyes." Within that context, she wrote this hymn with the suffragist imagery of men born of women as an important kind of obvious statement in her advocacy for women's suffrage and liberation. A lesser-known writing of hers was earlier on, likely in the mid-1840s, and again, a thanks to Derek, who had helpful research and commentary on Julia's work and life. He has a few reflections that he wrote that he might be willing to share with you all if you ask on Substack. They're pretty interesting. There's a story that she wrote called The Hermaphrodite, about an intersex person and their story of struggle and heartbreak. Itself a writing that breaks boundaries of the gender binary, especially in its day, and in the gender-expansive body positivity language reclaims in some way this term from its later degrading use, back to its origins that the word itself is made up of Hermes and Aphrodite, deities. So to be born of both is to be literally made in the integrated image of the divine. This month's theme is imagination. And in Universalist theology, this brings up the old doctrine of imago Dei, to be born in the image of God or the holy. The idea that there is that of God or Gaia in each soul, each of us, an embodiment and expression of the divine. In the midst of that story, there's a love story between Eva and Raphael, ending in a moment of death where there is a lane of a flower watered with tears and then bloomed into a star-like flower, leading to transfigurement from Raphael's bosom into a oneness of their spirits. This idea that a definition of heaven is a harmonious blending of identities that is, as it were, made of the gods and goddesses, trans-divinity. Derek wrote it this way: in this parable, we have each of the elements that would eventually make their way into the battle hymn. A fragrant star-like flower like a lily, a glory in a bosom that has the power of transfiguration. This theme of transfiguration continues as Howe, a decade after the battle hymn, wrote the other words in An Appeal to Womanhood Everywhere. Or in other words, for the love that all is holy, disarm. Stop the violence. Women must lead the way. Just a few short years after the end of the Civil War and the founding of this congregation. This theme of transfiguration continues. Years later, in 1900, there's this newspaper image that you also have in your order of service. Maybe you were looking at that already, from the Boston Sunday Post. It lays out what Julia believed about the future and ardently worked for, a declaration of women empowerment as a balancing out the systems and generations of patriarchy. Her prophecies, of which we are still working for and are under constant continual threat well over 100 years later. How might we still be transfigured? To move beyond the either-or into some realms of possibility, beyond the binaries of gender, of identity, to get over our fixation on security meaning force, and strength meaning industrialized violence. She implores the more likely people of the world, women, to be the ones to call for and demand peace. As one theologian put it, nationalism is a religion, and war is its liturgy. In her words, she writes, "We women of one country will be too tender of those of another to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up, disarm. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil for the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home." It's a statement of liberation to break the bonds of gender norms, each bearing after the sacred impress, she writes, not of Caesar, but of God. Not of Caesar, but of God. That is a striking warning yet again in an age of rising tyranny, as it was displayed on the Old North Church recently in Boston commemorating the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride. An image went up there that said, "Let the warning ride forth once more, tyranny is at our door." We are in need of each other's breaking open the hard grounds of tyranny, the tyrannies that meet us in the subtle moments of each day, the expectations and assumptions of our identities, words hurled at each other in hatred or bigotry, and the larger stories of how we honor each other's dignity in resistance to the generations-old oppressions that are still with us. There is hard ground to till, friends. We know. And we have root systems that run deep in defiant beauty in the messy ground of liberation. Perhaps if one is planting or noticing flowers on this day in this spring season, the echoes of Julia's invitation is to till up the hard ground and the rigid terrain of stories we're told to believe, to break up the hard soil solidified over generations by oppressions of every kind, and to find in the breaking open something fresh and new, filled with life and possibility, something we can imagine that is living and breathing beyond the binaries of either or, into the growing imagination of both and. And in that soil, these seeds in our hands, we can be about the work of tilling and planting and caring and watering, as Julia says, by baptism or by tears. Gardens where swords and shields turn into plowshares, where we study war no more, and we cultivate a life that transfigures you and me and all of us. And to that life, glory and hallelujah. The hymn is If Every Woman in the World. We'll sing verses 1 and 3. It's in our teal hymnal. I invite you to rise, arise, all you of the day, in body or spirit, and we'll sing together. I invite you, as you're comfortable, to place a hand on your heart or toward the sky or earth in gratitude. With these words from Alice Walker. She says, "So our mothers and grandmothers have, more often than not, anonymously handed on a creative spark, a seed of a flower they themselves never hoped to see. My mother adorned with flowers whatever shabby house we were forced to live in, ambitious gardens that bloomed profusely. And so, guided by my heritage of a love of beauty and a respect for strength, in search of my mother's garden, I found my own." May that be so. Amen.